C, D, E, F, G, A sharp, C sharp, what about D? Alright, hello and welcome to Miwoosh Guitar School. So today we are going to talk about the musical alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What do those letters have to do with music? And how does that impact you? Do you need to know this? So let's get right into it. I'm going to start by just playing some notes. Okay, nothing very musical about that. You'll notice I can do the same thing if I leave my hand right where it is. Same notes, but if I stay on one string, it's a little better visual for you. So whenever I'm skipping over one note to go to the next one, that's a one tone jump. If I take the next note, that's a semitone. So this is also called a step. And this would be a whole step. See? Whenever I skip over one. So I'm going to use tone and semitone. So this is a tone jump. Another tone jump. Semitone. Then three more tone jumps. And finally one last semitone jump to get me to the octave. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. That is a major scale. Specifically, not just because of the notes that I played, but specifically the jumps, the intervals. That's what's critical when you're looking at a scale. It's the jumps between the notes that give the scale its characteristics, its very nature. So we just picked 7 nice sounding notes out of those 12 notes from before. Actually, it's 8 notes out of the 13 because 2 of them were the same note. I started and ended on the same note except 1 octave higher. So that's the diatonic scale, and in Western music we call that the major scale. So it has a very familiar sound. It's something you've been listening to your entire life. So just with those diatonic scale notes, we've skipped ones that we would consider sharp or flat relative to the ones we did play. So wherever I went, for example, from here to here, we skipped this one. There are 5 of those notes that I skipped from the original set that I played. So, which ones A, B, and C, etc.? Not so fast. First, we're going to talk about some frequencies. Now, this frequency, if you have a digital tuner handy, is 130.8 hertz. This one, 138.6 hertz. This one, 146.8 hertz. This one, 155.6. What do those numbers mean? And they're not exact, but they're very, very close. And how close it has to be is something we're going to talk about a little later in the video. But those are just numbers that have to do with how many times the string vibrates in 1 second if I let the note ring out for an entire second. So what about the frequencies in between here and here? And there are some. If I bend the string, you hear the way there was a number of different sounds in that range there. And if I had a slide, I could play that same sequence all the way up to here, and you'd hear every frequency between here and here. But those aren't notes. Because I started here, the next note is this one in the chromatic scale. The next note, this one, is from the diatonic scale. So we're talking about either every note, or we're talking about just the notes from the major scale, which is the one that we use to write music. A guitar can hit any of these notes. With a slide, it can hit any of the frequencies in between them, but it can hit any of the chromatic scale notes. A piano can hit any of the chromatic scale notes because it has all the extra keys. An instrument like a harmonica is one that plays just a diatonic scale, and that's it. It only plays those notes. It doesn't play any more, and it certainly doesn't play the sharps or flats that you skip. So you have to pick one that's in the right key for what you're going to be playing, and if you change to a song in a different key, you have to have another harmonica in your pocket. Certain orchestral instruments just have to be manufactured in a certain way. They do have, I'm told, some tuning ability, but it's minimal and not like a guitar that you can tune, or any stringed instrument that you can tune to any pitch. Brass instruments, for example, are very limited, and in fact the tunable instruments like guitars or string instruments in general have to be tuned to accommodate those sort of non-tunable instruments. So what about A440? Have you heard of that? A440 refers to 440 hertz, and this is designated as the A above middle C, and it's an orchestral convention set by the American Standards Association, I think maybe like 80 years ago, and it's called concert pitch. So it's A from the 4th octave, and it wasn't always 440. It's been as low as I think like 410 and as high as 460 in the past. It just depends on where you are and when in history you're getting this information from. So currently there is a debate about whether A432 is preferable to A440. I don't personally think it makes a difference. Just as long as we settle on something, I think that's what's important, so that you can play along to music that you're hearing on the radio, for example. If everything is tuned to A440, that means that that specific note is going to sound the same when your guitar is tuned up as it does in the song you're hearing on the radio, and then on the song that you hear coming up right after it. It doesn't always work out this way. Thinking of examples, Duran Duran, Hungry Like the Wolf is slightly sharp. It's noticeably sharp. If you try and play along to that song, you gotta tune your guitar before you start. If you're gonna play with any old Black Sabbath, you have to, I think they're sharp as well, even more so. So having a convention like A440 is really helpful if everybody follows it, because then music all kind of syncs up with each other. And as a pitch designation, it basically indicates whether or not a particular instrument is going to sound good with other similarly manufactured or tuned instruments. So if something can be slightly sharp or slightly flat, how do you measure that? How do you compare them? Well, the way that's done is using what's called a cent. So what's that? If you've seen on a tuner, when it says that something is 5, 10, 20, 30 cents sharp or flat, what that's talking about, if you take an octave, so again, from here to here, this frequency here is exactly twice this frequency. Now, if we divide this up into 12 slices, like we played before, each one of these steps, if you divide that into 100 pieces, that is 100 cents. That's what cent means. It's 1/100th. So the average human ear can distinguish something that is 5 cents sharp or flat. Anything less than that, most people can't tell that it's slightly sharp or slightly flat. So 5 cent is important. That's a sort of a threshold. How many hertz is that? Well, it's going to be different from one note to the next, from one octave to the next, because the frequencies keep going up. So 5, let's say 5 hertz. 5 hertz sharp from a note here might still be noticeable, but 5 hertz difference from this note won't be, because it's less than 5/100ths of the difference between this note and this note, which is the next one up. So a cent is 1/100th of a semitone. The semitone, how many hertz that is, well, that changes constantly, but what is a semitone? Well, that's pretty consistent. No matter what frequency you're playing, no matter what note you're playing, the semitone is always going to be for one note to the very next one that's available to you. So if we look at these notes again, that's 130.8, 138.6, 146.8, 155.6. Now those don't mean much yet, but what we're looking at, what's the difference between them? Well, from here to here, that's 7.8 hertz. Here to here, 8.2 hertz, and here to here is 8.8 hertz. So it changes every single time. So what's 5 cents of being sharp, let's say? Well, 5 cent sharp of this note is only going to be 0.39 hertz of difference. Very little difference. From this note to this note, 5 cents is 0.41 hertz. From here to here, it's 0.44 hertz. So again, we're talking about very small adjustments with the lower notes, but when you start getting up here, 5 cents is going to be more than a quarter or a half of one rotation, one cycle per second, 1 hertz, right? So what about these letters? That is coming up in the next video. I'm glad you tuned in. Please click the link to jump to part 2, and we will keep talking about the musical alphabet. Thanks for watching.